All right, Eric, thanks for joining me on podcast. Appreciate having you here. Appreciate making another connection from mutual friends, Jordan Montgomery and David Nurse. And you had a good friend, Colin Henderson, on your podcast, another guy that got connected through this kind of, fun little fraternity per se, if you want to call it. But for those guests, obviously they heard about you in the intro that I shared, but as well would love to just share about Eric Wood and what's really you're passionate about in your heart in regards to what you're doing now and kind of how you got there.
Yeah, after a 9-year NFL career, I'm now in broadcasting. I've been with Fox, ESPN, CBS, and I've kind of settled on the Buffalo Bills radio gig for now. And I do the color for their games. It's a lot of fun. The Bills are pretty good right now. Super Bowl hopes. We'll see where that ends up being at the end of the season. But it's been a lot of fun to still be around that organization. I played my entire career in Buffalo. I have a podcast now called What's Next with Eric Wood. And it's been fun to kind of go on this what's next journey for me, finding out what's next for me in life over these last few years since being out of the NFL and learning from a lot of people similar to yourself in how you kind of make that transition to make your what's next in life your best yet. So for me, I'm all about serving others, passing along that wisdom, trying to make a positive impact on people. I love the Jackie Robinson quote, and it's actually on my stationery that I got next to me because I have a thank you card to write in a little bit, but it says essentially, life's not important except in the impact it has on others. And so
I love that.
That's kind of what I like to live by. But probably most importantly, I'm a husband to Leslie and dad to Grace and Garrett, who are 6 and 3.
So let's talk a little bit about. You talk about this transition. This podcast, the Impact Driven Leader podcast, is a leadership podcast. And it's a lot of, filling in, being that bridge between generations. And, I know there's going to be a lot of elements that pop out. You're now a alumni player. I'm not going to say past that, but you're still a part of the Bills organization. You're part of, the team, obviously, as part of the Bills radio network. And one of the questions I really wanted to say is like, okay, Eric, a couple years removed, an injury, we can get into all those things. But if you were to go back and say, I got, a couple more weeks in me, I got another year in me. And why would you want to go back and impress upon those young offensive linemen to say, hey, dude, when I was 22 and I was coming out of Louisville, I thought I had it all figured out. Dude, I was just dead wrong. What would be that thing that you would go and just impress upon those guys?
Man, there's so much I could get into from a development standpoint. I've had so many guys come onto my podcast, and I would say the same thing. Right when you get into an organization, figure out someone in a position with the team and the organization that you want to get to. It doesn't even have to be necessarily at your same position, but go find that person and learn from them. Study their daily process. Figure out the way they eat, the way they prepare for games, the way they watch film. And study all of that and emulate it, because I always feel like if someone's already got it figured out in life, why try and reinvent the wheel? And those people that got it all figured out are usually similar to us, ready to give that information away to serve others with that. And maybe you avoid a landmine or two that they might have stepped on along the way. Similar, and I think that applies to anything, Tyler. I think that's any organization. When you get there, learn from others, people that are in the speaking field. Go figure out what they did along the way to make themselves successful. The podcast world, whatever that may be for you, go figure out who those individuals are and then try to align yourselves with them and try and learn from them. And so I would tell those people that. Now, I also would say, enjoy the ride. The NFL is so special. It can be taken from you at any time. And I feel like, especially towards the end of my career, I finally started to truly enjoy it. But I would say for the first 5 or 6 years, I put so much pressure on myself to perform as a former first-round pick that I don't know that I always truly enjoyed the moment. And so I would go back and tell anyone that, yes, you want to have as great of a career as you can. Use the gifts that God has given you to their fullest. Don't waste a second of that time, but also enjoy the ride.
So, as you say that, I think that attribute of I almost didn't realize what I was going through when I was going through it. That first 5 to 6 years, I think back about myself professionally, everything else is you kind of have blinders on. Oh, you think it's like this, But the reality is it's not like that at all. I think if we look at whatever field career that is, you're going to find people in that place. And a lot of times they can end up pushing people away. They can end up kind of ostracizing themselves. They can end up being an antagonist to an organization. And I think that's just a reality. And so if you were to go back and you see that same guy, right? He's, maybe at the end of his rookie contract, he's a first rounder as well. And you see that where it's kind of like it's all about him trying to get to that next contract. And the same thing can happen in sales is what do you pull him aside and say, hey, dude, like, let me give you a piece of wisdom. I know that you're trying to do this all, but what is that thing that you tell him?
Well, I'll say this. A lot of times the big contracts come with team success. A lot of times the big accolades come with team success. I remember in college, I was an All-American my freshman and sophomore year. Now I was a much better player my junior and senior year, but our team wasn't nearly as good. And so a lot of accolades come with, like I said, team success. So what are you doing to lead those around you, to pour into those around you so that the team is better? Because that is going to then create these bigger accolades, these bigger contracts. Now, luckily the Bills rewarded me twice with contract extensions, even though we were in the longest playoff drought in all of professional sports. So that doesn't always apply. But I will say at times we had some offensive success. You could kind of cherry pick some numbers to say we did have some success during that time, and they weren't just extending a guy that was creating a losing culture. I feel like I was trying to contribute as much as I possibly could to create a winning culture in Buffalo.
Yeah, I'll just throw this out. I mean, I'm a Browns fan, man. Okay, I'm a Buckeye as well. I'm from Ohio. I'm a Browns fan. You're from, South. I mean, I'm guessing you were a Bengals fan growing up. I'm just guessing.
Yep.
Okay. And so being a Browns fan, the only other team to have as big of playoff drought is the Bills, who surpassed the Browns. I don't know how, but that idea of being the lovable losers, dude, I get that. I understand that. And, going to school in upstate New York, there's a lot of people listening to this podcast that are part of the Bills Mafia. I got to experience that in New York. And it's kind of, I think that culture that's so supportive and so endearing that, in either one of those fan bases, like we'll put up with a lot. Where do you see that showing up in the world that you live in now as you're trying to run your own businesses or as you're trying to, get out and speak, to be able to say, hey, this may not be going well right now, but just stick with it. Like trust the process, support those around you.
Well, adversity is going to come across everybody in life, and the sooner you realize that, the better. I've heard it said you're either in a storm in life, coming out of a storm, or heading into one. Mm-hmm. So don't be surprised when those storms in life come. And, there's much more severe things in life that are likely going to happen to you than your team losing. But to show allegiance through those times and to stick with the Buffalo Bills, for instance, through those 17 years, has produced fruit now that you had that allegiance, and now you can truly appreciate these really good times that the Bills are having now. And had you not experienced all those times that the Bills were on the verge of the playoffs and then boom, injuries and whatever else caused this slide at the end of the season, now you can truly appreciate it more because you understand the opposite end of the spectrum. And then also, with enough resiliency, you will always get out of those bad times, and you have to understand that.
So, looking over and preparing for this, you've had some, I'd say, tough times in your personal life. You've had some tough times in your professional career. There's one that just kind of stuck out to me, and I thought it was pretty interesting, one that we share. And when we were 14, we were each 14, we had a brother that died. And as I read that story and kind of, I wanted to ask about it again from my own point because as I've shared on this podcast and to me, my brother's death had an impact much, much later on me in life in a positive way. And I want to, hear about your brother and hear about the impact that he's made on you as a person, but how that affected you professionally and through your family too.
Well, first off, I want to say sorry about your loss. I was unaware of that, Tyler. So that is something we share in common, unfortunately, that we share that in common. But, my brother Evan, he passed away at the age of 11, and he was born with severe cerebral palsy. So he never walked or talked or breathed on his own. Well, when we would have conditioning sessions in college and they were just grueling, I would think to myself in those moments, like, how am I going to complain in this moment about running, something I'm blessed to be able to do? I had a brother that never walked. How am I going to complain about running? So there was multiple times in my life where I would think about Evan and the struggles that he had throughout his life and maybe not feel as sorry for myself and use that kind of power to get through tough times or tough workouts or tough situations, whatever it may be. And so moving forward throughout my career, that allowed me, as I got into the NFL and had some money to be able to give back to a community, to those in need, to have a serious heart for those in Western New York especially that had sick children. And so financially, we would give them assistance. We provided great experience, bring them out to Bills games in a suite from a hospital where for some of these families, that's the only time they left the hospital was to come to this specially disinfected suite for the games. And so that allowed me to be able to pour back into the community and truly be able to talk to these families and come from a place of knowledge and understanding of what they're going through. So recently I renamed my foundation up there, which was the Eric Wood Foundation. Now it's the Evan Wood Foundation because I wanted to honor him because people will always remember me in Buffalo because I played football. I'll have a legacy up there. And now I think it's special that my brother will also have a legacy in Western New York.
What do you think if you, again, as a 14-year-old and relating that, and I think it's important because, sometimes Colin talks about this, it's drama, trauma, daddy and mama, it's the mindset. And you talked about your mindset. It's like, how could I sit here and be frustrated about going through this where, my brother, he couldn't walk and he suffered this and part of his, the disease really affected everything in his life and what led to him dying. And if you look at that, how do I need to block that out? And especially as a leader, and I think what's important there is, here's where I want to make a connection, is how did those teammates that you had that either in high school or college, and they said, oh, we're looking at Eric, and we see Eric pushing through. We see Eric, winning the jersey for the guy that's out here working the hardest. How did that motivate them as far as you knew, or did it almost push you apart?
No, I think it would definitely be motivational, or you're just leading by example. And those that it would push you apart, those aren't people that I want to be aligned with anyways. I want teammates. I want people in the fight with me that I want the people that I'm looking at and say, how can I catch them in the sprints? How can I work as hard as them? Those are the people I want to be surrounded with in life in general. And, everybody's got I think God gives some people, so God wires some people, wires them just a certain way to where they might be wired just a little tighter. They push a little bit harder, and that's fine. But I want to be surrounded by those types of people because those people inspire me. And so maybe at times that was inspiring to others. Maybe at times I could be an example for maybe a coach to point to and say, hey, you need to work as hard as Eric. But that wasn't always the case. A lot of times it was others, but I wanted to be surrounded by those guys. I want those guys on my team.
Where did that show up as well, in the NFL? And I guess even, let me retract that. How has that showed up after the NFL? And because you had these years of conditioning for football, and all of a sudden you get told you're not going to play anymore, dude. It gets ripped away from you, and you're kind of like, what now?
Yeah, so it's that. How does everything happen for you and not to you, and switching your perspective and being able to get up off the mat in life and attack the next thing. And so for me, I'll generally say, I don't do anything halfway. So as I approach this next chapter of life, I'm not just going to sit around on the couch. Now, yes, I get to be present a lot more than I did when I was playing at home. But yes, I could be more present, but I still want to make an impact. God gave me gifts, and I don't want to sit there at the end of my life and feel like I wasted those gifts that God gave me. So if I can communicate well, then what am I doing to pass along so many of these gifts that I feel like God's given me through lessons, whether that's through other people, whether that's from sports, the game of life, whatever it may be. How can I pass along those lessons to others. So how do I attack that now? Well, it's a podcast. It's podcast appearances like this. It's speaking engagements. It's pouring into younger generations. I loved how you said bridging the gap between generations. And now I've never said it exactly like that. I'll use that now.
Go
but
for it, man.
I'll often tell, college guys when I'm speaking to a team or a group of rookies in the NFL, hey, all I'm doing is speaking from a place of, here's what I wish I knew when I was in your shoes. Take it if you want, but you're most powerfully suited to serve those who are in a position you once were at. And I'm just trying to pass along what I wish I knew when I was in your shoes.
So what is that? Like, what's that one thing that you're like, man, if I can, impart upon any person, just that, as it's been told to me, Rory Vaden has this. It's like, what problem do you solve? And so what problem does Eric solve?
Wow, that's a great question. I wish I could say three things. I'll say this, and there's a lot that goes into this, but being prepared in all moments leads to confidence in my world, and confidence is the number one indicator for success, no matter where you're at. So if you're going to play football, the better you can be prepared for a game, a practice, a workout, whether that's nutritionally, whether that's how you warmed up and stretched, whether that's how much film you watched, how well you know the playbook, that's going to give you so much more confidence and allow you to play with confidence, which, like I said, in Jason Selk, in my world, kind of like the best of the performance coaches, kind of on the scientific side, he would say that that's the number one indicator for success. So how prepared can you be heading into a game, practice, whatever it may be, and then you can relate that so easily to the business world. And when you look at football, 97% of our week, I think I heard Dabo Sweeney say 97% of the week is spent on preparation and 3% is what you see on TV, what is judged on film. So all of that preparation, how serious are you taking it and what all are you putting into that time is so important. And so when you're thinking about yourself out there and you're in sales, let's say, how much preparation time are you truly putting into knowing what you're selling, who you're trying to sell to, communication styles, sales techniques, how much time are you putting into that preparation? And if you truly got it right, you should go in extremely confident in those situations.
So can I, you said you had three, right? Because that's prepared as one. And so I want to make sure I put a timeout here because let's hold on to those. But I want to talk to Eric, the captain, Eric, the center, Eric, the guy making the calls, to say in your preparation, what are you doing to make those other four guys and the other linemen? What are you doing to make sure they're successful and prepared by example or what you're reading, how you're doing? Walk me through that experience that Eric learned over the years as a 9-year NFL Pro Bowl lineman.
That's an excellent question, Tyler. And, as an offensive lineman, when you step into that center role, you're generally the leader. You're the one that's communicating. So are you bringing people in to watch extra film, to show them what you see, show these young guys how to actually study film, study an opponent to understand how they're going to try to attack you during a game? And then as far as game day goes, your preparation for the game, your process leading into the game to play your best. And then, a lot of times on game day, it's how well you can communicate to your tackles and guards. And then are you putting people in a position to be successful because a lot of times I can dictate the blocking scheme. And if I was selfish, I could say, I'm going to take this guard and give myself a little bit of help on every play, but that might not be the best for the group. Now, there might be times that the play dictates that, but not always. And so I think for those listening out there, it's taking those on your team, your group, and how can you pour into them the most? Can you communicate to them in those high stress moments to allow everybody to succeed? Because I know personally that if I'm the center of the Buffalo Bills offensive line and we give up 5 sacks, the whole offensive line gave up 5 sacks. It doesn't matter who gave them up. Really, all anybody knows is that the Bills' offensive line stinks. Well, as part of your team, it's likely the same way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I won't go there. I mean, as a Browns fan, we set plenty of records for sacks and the offensive line was much aligned.
So good.
What was that?
And everyone knows how good Joe Thomas is. I mean, Joe Thomas wasn't giving him up.
He didn't give them up, but, and Alex Mack, who got picked ahead of you, we don't know how many he gave up, but all the other guys gave up a lot. And actually, they were good then. It was the years later. But let's talk about this, though. Okay, so you talk about that preparation. I'm going to get them into the film room with me. I'm going to make sure that they are aware. But how much did you really, and maybe this is thinking through stuff you didn't think about, but how much did you work to connect with them to make sure that when you were speaking into them, that they actually believed you, as opposed to, dude, he's just another guy. Like, I'm the top guy in college. I've been an All-American, whatever it may be. How much did you have to connect with them in order to say, hey, we have one job together. Let's do this together. And yeah.
Yeah, that's another great question. And so I learned about halfway through my NFL career that this generation now, especially this likes culture of social media that aren't used to a lot of criticism, they aren't used to getting treated like we did in college. And I always go back to this kind of generation coming out of college now and into college now. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You need to build a relationship with these guys. And I had a group of 3 rookies that we were counting on to play, and I believe it was 2013 or 2014, but I'm a captain on the team. We needed these guys to play. They were all 3 draft picks. Well, by the end of the season, they hated me. And I love these guys. But I had rode them so hard because that was my leadership style was, come on, bring it along. Well, that NFL season's so long, they finally got tired of it, and they weren't used to how long that NFL season is, and they despised me by the end of the year. And so I had to learn at that point that I need to build relationships with these guys. And look, these were guys that were at my house for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but that wasn't enough. It was the daily encouragement that they needed. So for those out there, I mean, I would always say now, you need to build a relationship before you're ever going to give criticism nowadays. And I'm not picking on a younger generation. I'm only 35 years old, but it's different nowadays. These guys grew up with social media and people telling them how good they were for so long, and all their pictures were liked. And the recruiting process is even different for these colleges nowadays because for so long these guys have been told by all the recruiting sites how good they are. And so it's a different animal nowadays. You truly have to build that relationship.
So I don't mean to camp out on this, but it's something I think is good that, we can look at it as, okay, like you just described, it's like, hey, a lot of these players, or we can look at an organization, doesn't matter what field you're in, if the age of, hey, I'm looking for likes. One of the things that I find in talking to people and realize is it's that people actually care. And I think you probably have seen this. You've probably talked to guys that were just like, dude, Eric, you actually care. And I think that's where there's like this genuineness of people have realized that coaches or, employers, whatever, it's like, I'm going to get something from you. To me, it was a toxic style of leadership is like, how can I get something from you? I can remember walking into my very first corporate event when I worked for a corporation, and I walked out there, I'm like, no one cares about me. They just look at how much money can they make off of me. And one of the pieces that I think you're tying into, and I think is the great opportunity, is like, actually go tell people they care. They matter. Like, they matter as a person. They matter, overall. And I think that's what you kind of learned through the process. And did you learn that because someone else told you, or you're kind of like, I got to try it a different way?
I learned because I realized I needed to try it a different way. Now, I've heard it said beautifully recently from a guy who I've become friends with, and that's David Novak, the former CEO of Yum Brands, who had 1.5 million employees under him and realized the power of recognition. People want to be recognized in life. And David tells this powerful story about, he had 1.5 million employees under him, but he wanted to go show the individuals working at a KFC, a Taco Bell, a Pizza Hut, whatever restaurant chain they were with. He wanted to show the employees of the month how much they meant to him and the organization. So he would personally deliver this rubber chicken. A lot of KFC was their biggest brand for a while. So he was going to deliver this rubber chicken, and that was the Employee of the Month award. And it was silly, but they made a big deal about it, and it meant a lot to people. And David said he got a call at his office one time, and he wasn't even sure how the call necessarily got through to his actual phone, but he said he answered it, and it was one of his employees' wives, and they said, "Hey, David, I just want to let you know that my husband, your now former employee, he passed away, but he wanted to be buried with that rubber chicken, and that's how much that recognition you gave to him meant to him." So there is just tremendous power in recognition, and that can be, as a leader, that can be just such a powerful tool, whether it's just spotlighting an employee, whether as a spouse, spotlighting your wife or your children on something that they specifically do well. There is just tremendous power in that to bring confidence into that individual.
As I think about that, I think one of the great, kind of opportunities there is to spotlight, you talk about the guy that wanted to get buried with a rubber chicken and how meaningful that was. And I believe every single person has like one little thing that is going to impact the most. And I think a great challenge as a leader is to just be curious enough to try to find that. And I believe if you do that, man, that builds connection that goes beyond anything that you're collectively doing together.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just tremendous power in words in general. Like, so many people live with this kind of glass ceiling above them. And it's been amazing to me, over 100 podcast guests that I've had that all have achieved high levels of success. That doesn't mean tremendous monetary success, just success in all buckets of life. They're just successful people. They're people that I look up to. It's amazing how many of them had one person at some point in their life speak words of confidence into them, and you never know when that's going to happen. You never know when you could be that individual that gives someone the confidence. I think back to when I got into the NFL, when I got to college, I used to talk to my high school buddies about if I could just be on the Bengals practice squad. He's talking, I was a Bengals fan. If I could be on the Bengals practice squad, I could make $80,000 a year. I could get a job in the offseason and make over $100,000. Well, then I make the freshman All-American team, and everybody on the freshman All-American team receives a letter, and on that letter it said that X amount of percent of these guys on this team will be first-round draft picks. Whoa, I could be a first-round draft pick? Now my goals changed. Now my vision changed. Now my life changed because of words that were written on a paper from someone I didn't even know. And so you never know when you can provide those words and how you can truly change someone's life.
Dude, that's I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome. And I believe, my as I've learned, is belief is the greatest superpower. Belief in yourself, as you just, shared there, is like, oh, I believe I can do this. Wow, I can go do amazing things. An opportunity as a leader is to find ways to pour belief into others. And I believe you're doing that. I believe you're doing that through your podcast. I believe you're doing that through, the people that you talk to. And so I thank you for that. As we wrap up here, I just want you to, kind of, again, give you the opportunity. If there's something other than that one prepared, if there was another problem that you're like, man, I just feel gifted or able to answer this, what is that?
Man, so, I talked about, I would talk to that younger generation, that those college guys, those rookies coming in the NFL, or maybe even those people in sales that just got hired, or, whatever organization you're with. I would tell them there's a lot of power and alignment in who you're surrounded by. It's always been known that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I heard Les Brown say before that you'll earn within $2,500 on average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, for me, as a Division I college athlete, as an NFL player, there was always either other great athletes or NFL players that you're surrounded by naturally. So there's going to be in the top 5, but sometimes the best 5 in that organization are going to be uncomfortable to be around. They don't eat junk food. They work so hard that sometimes it's convicting to you. They don't go out and party as much. Well, I mean, there was times in my life I might have avoided those types of people, but there's a lot of power in surrounding yourself with the right type of people, because you are eventually going to become those type of people. So that would be another one if I was given them that. And then, ultimately, the harder you work at something and the more you put into it, and we talked about preparation and surrounding yourself with, well, ultimately, you put in that work, you're going to gain confidence from putting in that work by being disciplined day in and day out. I just think there's tremendous power in that and what it's going to come to your life. And I would say that in the way of kind of structuring that to bring it in to focus would be to create just daily process goals. Like, what are the 3 wins you're going to knock out daily? And this is if you're an athlete, a father, a husband, a wife, you're working a business. Like, what wins are you knocking out daily, each and every day, that will set you up for success, that you're going to put in that work? And maybe it's a quick workout in the morning so that you're going to be in shape, because as my boy Ben Newman talks about, who works with the Alabama football team, they don't want a dude walking in the door that looks like he just ate 12 donuts. You got to kind of look the part. So maybe it's getting in a workout first thing in the morning. Maybe for me personally, it's getting in the Word in the first thing in the morning, because I want that to produce fruit in my life. And maybe it's I'm going to drive my daughter to school every morning that I have time to do it, or I'm in town, because I want that relationship to grow. Like, what are those wins for you personally? And in football, they were, you might come in, you might get treatment on your body, catch a workout, eat a healthy breakfast. Boom. Now you set yourself up for success for the day. You win enough days, you're going to see success in your life.
Love it. Love it. Man, thank you so much for sharing. It's been a tremendous value, and appreciate your perspective. And it's, to me, what I love is to be able to take a different perspective, a different experience, and apply those same attributes, because we're all people. We're all leading people. We all have experiences. I mean, I was a nutritionist for dairy cows, and at the same point, here I am. It's about people. And so thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I'm just lucky enough to be able to share, some of these lessons, some of these gifts that I've been given, either through podcast guests, coaches, whatever it may be. I'm lucky enough to pass them along, and I appreciate the opportunity, Tyler.
All right. Thanks, man.